Okay, hello, my friends. North Korea has been in the news significantly. I have three big stories, and we're going to start with that. The Center for Countering Disinformation has denied media reports about the alleged training of 100,000 North Korean soldiers to participate in the war in Ukraine. So it's not 100,000. This is by again, the Center for Countering Disinformation. It's carried in UATV English. But there is a different number because it is still happening, and here's what's happening. According to the Kyiv Post, Russia is preparing to deploy over 10,000 North Korean soldiers in the Far East. Now, that's not right up on the front line yet, okay? And now, so it's a tenth of what the other thing was saying, but there's another figure here that's going to be really troubling as well. A source from the Ukraine intelligence service revealed to the Kyiv Post they are being readied for transfer to the border regions near Ukraine, allowing the Russians to rotate and free up their personnel. So that's what they're saying now. I would imagine North Koreans will be involved in the hot conflict pretty soon, not just moving them to the border and allowing them to free up, but the Russians will use them like cannon fodder, just like they've used anyone else. Meanwhile, in North Korea, they're saying this is Noel Reports. North Korean state media claims that 1.4 million young people applied to join or return to the army this week. So what's going on? What's causing that? Blaming Seoul, that's South Korea's capital, for a recent drone incursion that escalated tensions. So what happened here was that the South Korean drones were dropping anti-North leaflets. That's it. In return, North Korea retaliated by destroying their own roads that connected North Korea to South Korea. Something's not quite right there, but that's so. I would imagine that the North Koreans have amped up the provocation to be something much more significant than it was. And this is a way to get more into the military and being patriotic and that sort of thing. But I'm not sure about the 1.4 million figure. This is what North Korea says, so we're going to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. So we have 100,000, 10,000, and 1.4 million as figures that have been bandied about so far. So this de-escalation policy of Ukraine's allies is creating everything needed for World War III, says the Kyiv Post. And that's right. I mean, it's just getting worse and worse as time goes on. Zelenskyy was speaking to the Verkhovna Rada today. He was giving his peace plan. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But before that, in that, he said this: our intelligence records not only the transfer of weapons from North Korea to Russia, but also the transfer of people. These are workers for Russian factories instead of Russians killed in the war, and personnel for the Russian army. So I talked about this a week ago. They will be going, if they're not going into the army, they will at least go to factories, if not factories in Russia, factories in North Korea, but probably all of the above in order to support the conflict in Ukraine. Okay. So let's talk about the peace plan and that sort of thing. Ukraine is pushing for NATO membership invitation before Biden leaves office. I don't know if Biden will do it. Biden is by nature afraid of escalation. This is just the way that he operates, viewing it as a significant legacy for the U.S. president. Otherwise, Biden's legacy is going to be that he really let down Ukraine by being afraid or being deterred by Putin. Says ambassador to NATO, she argued an invitation would remove a major bone of contention between Kyiv and Moscow. Actually, that'll reaffirm the bone of contention, but I understand how she is filtering that, and I just don't know that Biden will do it. When we think about what's happened, Biden is not allowing Kyiv to escalate by using American weapons in Russia. And I think you'll see, there's an argument that people keep bringing up and they say, well, it's just for the election. Okay, maybe it's for the election. And if it's for the election, that's shameful. And I get why you're doing it, but Ukrainians are dying in the meantime. And then on, November, 6th, 7th, something like that, you'll see them allowed to be used. And then so those between now and then will have died because of this policy, because of the election, let's say. Or, and I think this is more probable, Joe Biden is just risk averse and unwilling to escalate. His basic reaction to things is to try to de-escalate, and he won't allow that on the other side of the election. We'll only know in a month, but we'll know in a month. Okay, President Zelenskyy presented the victory plan in the Ukrainian parliament. Tomorrow, the plan will be presented to the European Council. It consists of 5 points and 3 annexes. So an annex is like something that you can't know or you're not allowed to know. It's secret. We're holding it close to the chest. Okay, the 5 points. An invitation of Ukraine to NATO now. It is a certainty of how the partners see Ukraine's place in the security architecture. Okay, number 2. So first, allow them into NATO and do it now. Invite them now. Of course, they will never actually be in, or it'll take time to actually get to the vote all the way through NATO. So if you invite them now, that doesn't mean they're in right now. And you got to get past Hungary, and that's going to be tricky. Strengthening defenses through operations in Russia, jointly shooting down Russian aircraft with partners, expanding the use of Ukrainian drones and missiles. Okay, so the first part is NATO helping shoot down Russian stuff. And I don't think that there's a lot of appetite for that. But the expanding the use of Ukrainian drones and missiles, there's a lot of appetite for that. Lifting restrictions on the use of weapons, not a lot of appetite. And access to partner intelligence, I think there's appetite for that. The defense point of the plan includes a secret annex. Okay. Deterrence, number 3, deterrence of Russian aggression. It also has a secret annex, which is accessible to the leaders of the United States, Britain, and Italy. Suggests deploying a comprehensive non-nuclear package on our territory to deter further Russian aggression. I'm not sure what that would look like. Number 4, strategic and economic potential of Ukraine, plus a secret annex that is being passed on to the US and EU. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like either, but that's point 4. 5, in the post-war period, Ukrainian experience should be used for the entire alliance and the defense of Europe. Kyiv suggests replacing, now this I think is a really interesting feature. Listen to this. Kyiv suggests replacing the US military in Europe with Ukrainian troops after the war. Now, this is something that I think Donald Trump could actually get behind in the peace plan if the presidency goes to Trump, where, okay, if we have this, at least we're going to get these people out and he'll be able to, make those kind of promises, because Trump's, just like Biden's reaction is, his knee-jerk action is not to escalate. Trump's knee-jerk action is to be more isolationist and let you do that thing over there and we'll stay over here. So that might be something that'll sing to him. I don't know. The president also emphasized that if we start implementing his victory plan now, we may be able to end the war by 2025. That seems optimistic to my mind. He emphasized that North Korea is now in a coalition of criminals together with Russia. Our intelligence records the transfer of not just weapons, but also the transfer of people. In fact, this is the participation of a second state in the war against Ukraine on the side of Russia. Everyone sees help of the Iranian regime, as well as the cooperation with China. So he's painting a pretty nasty picture of what's actually happening, and his means of getting out of this, I'm not sure if the European Union, NATO, US, etc., want to do that. Now, this is part of his speech, and I just want to show you a moment or two of it. This is an irreversible strengthening of the Ukrainian defense against the aggressor. It is realistic to protect our positions on the battlefield in Ukraine. We want the Russians to feel what a war is. That's right, they need to feel it. It can't just be one-sided. You keep hitting Ukraine with impunity and you don't get hit back. The center of balance has really shifted since the Kursk invasion about 2.5 months ago. We are not naive. Ukraine does not believe and will not believe that most of the Russians will realize the depth of the moral decline of their state. But they must feel the decline of the Russian army. And I think that's some powerful words. Okay, Ukraine is at war with 3 countries, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. I think at least the Russia and North Korea, it seems very clear that that's the case because there's now boots on the ground. Okay, Kremlin spokesperson Peskov immediately responded to Zelensky's speech and stated that Zelensky's new victory plan is just the same as the U.S. plan to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. Keeps repeating that same kind of line. This has to be a horrible job to be. Can you imagine being Putin's press secretary and having to make stuff up to defend against things and lie all the time? It must be just very taxing. Okay, last of the 3 big stories. The presidential election. It's so confusing trying to figure out what's happening. When you look at national presidential election polls, so this is Real Clear Politics, which is a legitimate organization. But when you look at national polls, it's not telling you much, but it's mostly Harris, 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 Trump, Harris, tie, right? But that's national spread. That's not what you need to look at. What you need to look at are the swing states. But before we look at the swing states, let's look at the predicted market. 2024 presidential election winner, Trump 55 to Kamala 50 cents. Like they bet their own money here. And then next one, which party wins the presidency in 2024? It looks like Republican to Democrat in the prediction market. Harris, the 47th president, yes, 50, no, 50. It's a tie. I mean, it's so close. Woman president elected in 2024, yes, 49, no, 51. So again, it's hard to tell from something like that. But these are the swing states that matter. Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. If we look at 270, which is looking at the aggregate polls of these different states, it's like Arizona and Georgia are Trump, and Michigan is Trump. Nevada is Trump. North Carolina is Trump. Pennsylvania is Harris. And so the aggregate polls from the swing states are not looking favorable. But when you look at the latest polls from 538, you're seeing Harris has Wisconsin, Harris has Pennsylvania, Harris has Nevada, Harris has Michigan, Trump has North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. So it's so hard to tell what's going on. But here's the thing, like people will talk about, well, he's a psycho. Even the Drudge Report called Trump American Psycho. That's a feature, not a bug. And what I mean by that is that this is something like the people that are most MAGA actually want him to be more psycho. Like, so conservatives like me are like, come on, man, what are you doing? This is not what we should be doing. We long for the days of Mitt Romney being, or John McCain being a gentleman to his opponent and being able to have a dialogue. That's not what they want. So that's where we are in a nutshell. Okay, my friends, last little bit, Darth Putin. Have any anti-imperialists noticed that North Korea directly joining the war is not considered an escalation? It's a good point. Like, that's a really good point. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.